We move on now to the U.S., where the stock index futures are expected to open a little chain today as traders prepared for a fresh batch of economic data. On the data front, ADB private sector payrolls will be reported at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time. The report is expected to show 185,000 jobs added in May. Weekly jobless claims and first quarter productivity and costs are reported at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Monthly vehicle sales will be reported throughout the morning and are expected to show about a 16.8 million vehicle annualized selling pace. Manufacturing activity will be reported in the manufacturing PMI at 9:45 a.m. and the ISM manufacturing report at 10 a.m. Construction spending is expected at 10 a.m. as well. The batch of data is important since second quarter data has been spotty, even though economists still expect a 3% growth rate. The rush of reports today, Thursday, comes ahead of the most important data this week, the May employment report on Friday. In Asia, stocks were mixed today following the release of Caixin PMI data from China, which was at an 11-month low, and as the yuan hit a 7-month high. Japan's Nikkei 225 jumped 1.07%, while the Kospi reversed earlier gains to trade lower. The Kospi closed the session down 0.12%. The Australian ASX 200 finished the session by up 0.24%. Markets in Greater China were mixed. The Hang Seng Index was higher by 0.49%. The Shanghai Composite closed lower by 0.5%, while the Shenzhen Composite fell 1.919%. And away from the markets, Barclays will sell shares worth £1.5 billion in Barclays Africa Group, marking another stage in its exit from the continent to focus more on the United States and Britain. Barclays says it will sell the shares to large investors, including South Africa's Public Investment Corporation, in a second such sale since the British bank announced in early 2016 its intention to offload most of its African business. Barclays is partly relying on funds raised from the sale to meet capital requirements that were identified as a concern by the Bank of England in a November stress test aimed at gauging its ability to withstand financial shocks. Absa Bank, which forms the bulk of Barclays Africa Group, says South Africa's finance minister has approved the deal. Barclays is also selling Barclays Bank Egypt, Barclays Bank Zimbabwe, which sit outside Barclays Group, Africa Group. And back here in Nigeria, Nokia has launched its new 3310 mobile phone here in Nigeria. And for Europeans, a Nokia revamped brick is a throwback to a simpler, more innocent age when phones were for speaking and reading. And for Africans, however, the jazzed-up 3310, which triggered ripples of nostalgia and curiosity when it went on sale this week in Europe, is an overpriced imitation of a simple handset that remains the backbone of communication across the continent.
Although mobiles are now as common in Africa as they are in the United States and Europe, smartphones are rarer, making up only 1 in 3 handsets in South Africa and 1 in 4 in Nigeria, and that's according to a 2016 study by the Pew Research Center. In many cases, the cost of both handset and data is the main factor constraining smartphone sales, but Africans also like the legendary durability of the brick and its weeks-long battery, important considerations in countries where insurance and electricity cannot be taken for granted.
They sell like 150 or 100 in a week because Nokia is a very strong phone and they have a good battery, you know, and people likes it.
This is how the famous 3310 looks like.
The original Nokia 3310, a basic talk and text phone, was the world's most popular device in the year 2000 and the first handset owned by many of today's smartphone users. The old Nokia has another advantage. Its lack of high-tech wizardry means it's untraceable and unhackable.
Nokia has always been the fastest-selling devices in Nigeria in the time past, and then people were attracted to Nokia especially because of its battery life. The famous thing about Nokia has been the battery life, and the design is so strong. When it falls on the ground and then the battery, everything falls off, people just put it all together and then your phone is back in shape. So People love the Nokia device because it's durable and, of course, the battery lasts for a very long time. So the expectation is high, and then people have started buying already.
The makers of its revamped cousin hope that its 22 hours of talk time and up to a month of standby time will heighten its appeal for customers looking for a break from smartphone overload or a reliable device for lively nights out. However, against the competition on the streets in Africa, the new 3310's $52 price tag is likely to raise eyebrows.
And in Congo, a delegation from the International Monetary Fund is there to discuss possible financial aid to counter higher inflation and rapid currency depreciation. The IMF suspended its last financial assistance to Congo, a $560 million loan program in 2012, after the government failed to provide sufficient details on the sale of state mining assets to an offshore company. In an address to Parliament, Prime Minister Bruno Shibala said the IMF might provide balance of payments and budgetary support as Congo grapples with inflation expected to near 30% this year and a currency that has lost half its value since last year. IMF assistance could help Africa's top copper producer to attract donors who have been put off in recent years by a tense political climate and reports of human rights violations. A quick break now. We'll be back in a moment. To stay with us.